Right. And how do we get all this stuff? Our wealth. We trust our wealth. Here's one. Just, what is it, 2 weeks ago or so, there was this earthquake in Haiti. Tragic. Hundreds of thousands of people died. And our hearts go out to them. We actually have a compassion child, and we don't know if she's alive or not, who was in Haiti. But as Americans, we look at that, and we are sad for it, but we also look and say, well, that can't happen here. We have the technology. We build, they don't build to the standards. It's that we trust that somehow we're smarter, and that couldn't happen to us. Guess what? It's an idol. We're trusting. We trust our military. It's another one. It's going to keep us safe. Or do you think the country was thrown into despair during 9/11? How could we be attacked? We're America. We're the most powerful country, and we were attacked. See, it's hitting these idols that we have. Some other ones, and this is probably one's going to kind of come to most of us in this room, intellectual idols. Most vet students, highly educated people, you kind of make idols of your intellect, the things you know. It's real easy. Intellectual ideologies we make idols out of. Our politics. There are certain things that that we put up and we treat as an ultimate thing. One that's interesting to me and interesting is idols in religion. Now we may think of totem poles and pagan societies that worship, but there are Christian idols that we make. If you think of anything as Christians, we make idols of.
Cross necklaces.
What was that? We make idols of our pastors, that's right. I told this book about Tim Keller. Some people would idolize him. And there's lots of famous pastors that a lot of people idolize. Anything else?
Mary.
We can make an
Yeah.
we can make an idol out of Mary.
Mary. Thanks, Paige.
Worship Mary.
Virgin Mary.
Oh, okay. True, yes.
We can make going to church an idol.
Right.
Yeah.
We can make our works, our good deeds. Now, what did Jesus say? Remember the Pharisees? They were probably the most righteous people back then. And those are the ones that Jesus criticized the most. Remember the Pharisee going in to pray? And he's saying, thank you, Lord, for giving me this and making me such a great person. I fast 5 times a week, and I give all this money. I'm glad that you didn't make me like this tax collector. And the tax collector just beats his chest and says, have mercy on me, a sinner. And who did Jesus say was justified? Another one that I know in my circles is doctrinal correctness. That's one of the things that we make an idol out of. I've got everything right. I understand propitiation, and I understand all these technical terms. It's imputed righteousness versus infused righteousness. And sometimes when we get like that, those are the people who look down at others. And you can tell if you have this. If you start to look at them, a brother or sister, and say, well, they're kind of simple. They don't quite have it all together to me. You made an idol out of your own doctrine. We're not saved by what we know. We're saved by Christ. We can make idols out of our ministry, the work that God has given us to do, or the spiritual gifts that He's given us. There's a scary passage in the Bible where some guys, people will come up to Jesus and say, Lord, haven't I cast out demons in your name? Haven't I healed the sick in your name? Haven't I done all these things in your name? Jesus says to them, get away from me, I've never known you. And cast them away. They were doing things, they thought they were doing ministry for God, but they didn't know God Himself. They made an idol out of the ministry. It's kind of scary, and it's very subtle too. So the next thing I want to look at is identifying idols. We talked about a couple, and in the devotional that's in your packets, there's some exercise to go through to help us to identify our own idols. But ultimately, it's important to realize that idolatry is really when we want to be God. It's us seeking to be God. Remember in the Garden of Eden, the serpent, when he came up to Adam and Eve, what did he say? He said, you can be like God if you eat of this apple. God knows of it. He knows you will be like God. And that was a temptation, and that they wanted. And it's what we do all the time. Every religion, other than biblical Christianity, wants to seek to be God. And how do you do that? It's by works righteousness. I taught a class in my Sunday school class, a high school class, and we looked at all the different world religions. We looked at Hinduism, Judaism, we looked at some branches of Christianity, we looked at New Age and Mormonism. All these religions, you look at them, and the underlying theme is you can be God. Hinduism, through multiple births, you can work your way up into nirvana and you become one with God. Even Christianity, we have to fight. The Reformation was, we had to fight that justification, our righteousness comes only from God, what Christ did. And we don't even add a little fraction of it. Because it's so tempted to make an idol. We want to be God. And why do we choose idols? In Romans, it talks about that, they pull this passage out. It's Romans 1, verses 21 through 23. It says, "For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God, or give thanks to him. But they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools, and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal men, and birds, and animals, and reptiles." So it says they knew God, but they didn't want to honor him. So they wanted to make things out of wood looking like animals. And we got a lot of these sitting on our tables right here. We make something like this, and I make this rhinoceros here. And then I say, this is my God, and I start to worship it. Well, I made this. I know I made it. But God made us to worship. And if we're not going to worship him, we need to worship something. And the thing we run into is we think we control these idols. I think if I make this thing, I control it. And I'm really, again, I want to be God, so I'm controlling it. But the thing we don't realize is that we think we control these idols, but whatever we worship actually controls us. Romans 6:16 says, "Don't you know that when you offer yourselves to something to obey as a slave, you are slaves to the one whom you obey, whether you are slaves to sin, which leads to death, or to obedience, which leads to righteousness." See, we think we can be independent. We think we can be our own God. Guess what? God didn't design it.